We are now 3 full seasons into the TOECAR Racing Series' existence. Throughout that time, many different drivers have taken to the asphalt in an attempt to chase down the win and a small slice of eternal glory. However, in this endless pursuit of victory, some drivers inevitably end up missing the mark. And while this is forgiven to an extent, after all, there are way more drivers than there are races, some drivers can't even help themselves to even sniff success. And if they do, they have to run over people to get it. So I've taken it upon myself to rank the 10 drivers that I think are most guilty of these things. My only criterion is that the driver has to have made at least 5 starts. That way we can tell which drivers are consistently bad and which ones just have strokes of bad luck. So without further ado, let's begin.
It's so hard. It's so hard. It's so hard.
Ever since it was announced that he would be joining the Garbage Truck Series roster for Season 3, Mark, I guess, wasn't exactly lending himself a lot of fanfare, with many people, including myself, thinking that the spot should have gone to someone way more deserving. As a result, he had pretty much every incentive to run up front as much as possible to shut those silly billies right the flip up. Instead, he would do pretty much the exact opposite, having one of the statistically worst seasons in all of TOECAR history. In his first 7 races, he'd finished no better than 23rd, with 5 of those races seeing him finish worse than 30th. But on week 8 at the 8 Bowl, he'd finally break through and win his first ever TOECAR race, under interesting circumstances, some of which I'll talk about later in this video. But apart from that and another unusually strong run at Pyongyang where he'd finished 9th, Mark, I guess, amounted to absolutely nothing all season, despite the fact that he almost won the championship. Cheer up, Mark, at least you actually managed to win in the feeder series, which is something that I can't say for pretty much every other driver on this list. Now here's to hoping your Cup Series season's a bit more consistent.
I am not the danger. I am in danger.
The reason Walter White is so low on the list compared to other drivers, well, besides his 2 top 10s that he somehow managed to muster during his disastrous campaign in the Cup Series, was because he was drafted into the Cup Series and there was a higher level of competition there than in the Trash Series. However, this still does little to excuse what was by all metrics a pretty horrendous season, to the point where even his good runs at Michigan and Atlanta weren't enough to keep him in the division. It's really a shame that the guy driving that iconic number 09 Mikosuke scheme performed as poorly as he did. But then again, that's kind of how it performed in real life before Brad Keselowski came along.
1 Dakota seems like more than enough.
Well, here we are, the first of our Goodies Trash Series rejects from Season 1. Get cozy because you're about to hear a TOECAR history lesson. What people don't remember is that unlike in the Splint Cup series, the competition level for the Goodies Trash series in Season 1 at least was actually pretty lopsided. On one side you had the drivers who actually knew how to drive a race car, you know, the decent drivers like Making Music, Joe Swanson, and, I'm just gonna say it, Tom and Walls. And then on the other side you had the drivers who had absolutely no business being in a race car and probably didn't even know which pedal was the brake and which pedal was the gas. There were 3 drivers in the Trash Series that failed to get a top 10 all season, and Dakota West was one of those drivers. The only reason he's on the list over Anthony Von Samsung is that Samsung actually came the closest to getting a top 10. He got an 11th place finish, while Dakota's best finish, as far as I could tell, was a 16th. Yeah. I really didn't want to have to do this. Look, I love Sportender as much as the next guy, but he just could not drive to save his life. I don't want to have to do this, but for the sake of this video, I have to be objective and assertive. 40th in Season 2 points, dead last by far in full-time points, and finishing behind Claire Pressure, who made only 7 starts after her son f***ing died, is just not what we're looking for in a TOECAR driver. I will give him some credit though, he ran an amazing race at the Season 3 finale in Kansas and finished 3rd in the Plot 55 ride, but just like with Mark, I guess, one good run is not going to salvage what has been a pretty terrible career thus far. However, I do like Sportender, and I hope that he does get more opportunities in the future. In all honesty, I don't really know why I like Sportender so much. I don't know if he just strikes me as the kind of person who constantly wants to improve, or if I just feel pity on him due to his radioactive sound bites.
Every fucking week! Fuck, I hate my fucking job!
Alright, man, cool down. Let's finish get some points here, damn it.
Fuck! Fuck!
You want cheese with that? You want cheese with that?
Oh boy, it's ranting time. I swear, the Asiago family is like your cousins at a family reunion. There are way too many of them, and only about 1 or 2 of them ever bring anything to the table at a time. Limburger proved once again that he's the only Asiago worth a damn by putting on an absolute clinic at Riki last season. Bellagio got his weeds trimmed at Daytona, so I thankfully don't have to talk about him anymore. and in his place would be Gouda Gucci Asiago. Do they make these people in a f***ing factory or something? And then there was Sarah, which... Look, I'm not going to say very much about her. All I'm going to say is that if she loses the Bulag this time around, she should get a job at the LAPD, because her just so happening to be an Asiago was one hell of a cop-out. What was the segment about again? Oh yeah, Asiago. I already made a video about him, so if you want to learn more about how he did in his first 2 seasons, make sure to check out that video once you're done with this one. But yeah, as far as Season 3 goes, he had one decent run at Riki in the Plot 55, which is the same race that his brother dominated. But as far as the rest of the season goes, he was pretty much irrelevant all season, despite making quite a few starts, so it's safe to say that most of the stuff that I said in that video still holds true. Oh yeah, except for that part when I said that Asiago never killed anyone, since he caused the death of Cheesy by being an absolute torpedo into Turn 3 at Riki. Great job, Asiago, you're really cementing yourself as an upstanding member of society.
And I don't talk about Canada enough in my videos!
Well, here we are guys, we're officially scraping the bottom of the piss bowl when it comes to Season 1 Trash Series rejects. Wayne Rexke is the worst of the worst. Now this was actually a little tough to nail down since I couldn't find the original Season 1 results, but as far as I could tell, Wayne Rexke's best finish in all of Season 1, which he made all 8 starts in by the way, was 22nd. Yeah, just let that sink in for a moment. This guy was so horrible that he didn't even get a Plot 55 start in Season 2, when it felt like pretty much every other driver that didn't quite make the cut for the full-time roster got an opportunity in the 55 car in at least one of the series. Now this is where we enter into a bit of a phase 2 with the list. By all accounts, Wayne Rexke should be number 1 since he had statistically the worst career in TOECAR history. However, in my eyes, it's not enough to be considered one of the worst by just getting poor results. No. To seriously be considered one of the worst, you have to earn that spot. By that I mean you have to be an absolute menace on track, running into anything and everything you see. And what better driver to kick off this transitionary phase than...
He threw him out of the ballgame, you gotta be me!
Babe Juth. You know, I consider myself a bit of a contrarian, but even I can't excuse a lot of the things Babe Juth has done on track. Season 1, he demonstrated to all of us that he had no idea where the brake pedal was, thus relegating him to the commentator vote, which of course he won handedly. Then in Season 2, he committed what many consider to be his most cardinal sin when he refused to move out of the way for the lead pack at Pigs Creek, thus causing a wreck behind him and nearly sending Muscular Zaxtrafi to the Shadow Realm. In Season 3 in the Truck Series, he showed us that he's at least tried to clean up his act, even though he is still far from an angel. Only time will tell if he's able to maintain this cleanliness, but for now we still have a few entries left to go. So why don't we go through some quick honorable mentions before we get to the podium of this list. It's pretty easy to clown on TOECAR's replacement drivers like Gwyn D444, Husqvarna, and Spare Ferguson, but just remember that most of them only made 1 or 2 starts, and their prospects for success were never really that great in the first place. If I hadn't set a minimum number of starts precedent, Gwyn would no doubt be near the top of the list, although I still think she was dealt a bit of a bad hand. She was driving Brad Oman's car, all things considered. Talk about a fall from grace. SBRC went from knocking on the door to the playoffs in Season 1 to dead last in full-time points without a single top 10 to his name in Season 2. While part of me wants to blame the equipment, the other part of me just thinks the sauce has gone sour. Fitting given his Walmart sponsorship. If it wasn't for a breakout Season 3, Chunk would have made it handedly onto the top 10. While I don't really have any problems with him, it can't be denied that he was given more chances than most drivers are in this line of work. The only reason I gave Chunk a mention over other drivers that sucked in the first 2 seasons but came alive in Season 3 like David Gutterball and Clink Bottles was because Chunk's improvement was the least significant out of all those drivers. Call me shallow. When the booth starts calling you the most forgettable driver in the series, you know you aren't about to be long for this world. I have no idea how he managed to stay in TOECAR after his poor showing in Season 1 in the Cup Series, but then in Season 2 in the Trash Series, he goes on to have about the identical season that he had in Season 1. Who knows, maybe he was just out of his element. After all, he wasn't driving a white Bronco.
I'm sorry, New South Wales, but you have this...
Dingo Dave, one of many drivers from Down Under drafted into TOECAR, and by far the worst. I'm sorry, but when you flounder this hard against guys like Zach Outback and Yorick, that just proves that something about you is definitely amiss. And for Dingo Dave, that thing was not knowing where the brake pedal was. And this fact would unfortunately rear its ugly head at the first ever TOECAR race at Daytona. You probably know where I'm going with this.
Gutter balls, they comes to a pause, Oh, no.
Oh, filming that. Oh,
Huge
big
hit.
one. Gutter
Oh
ball
my
hard.
God.
Oh,
The
man.
11 car still laps down. Oh
my goodness.
That's not good,
That's-
guys.
Oh, man.
Oh.
Oh, my goodness.
Hold your breath.
As tragic as this incident was, it served as yet another stark reminder that some people just should not be allowed to sit in the seat of a race car. Fortunately for everyone else, after that incident and the dreadful campaign that followed it in which he only nabbed one top 10, Dingo Dave would quickly and rightfully fade into obscurity. Maybe he can put that putter award that I gave him in my Season 1 Daytona review to good use if he ever decides to go golfing, because God knows he'll have a much better career in that than he ever would have in motorsports. So number 1 is obviously Buster Guts, so let's move on to number 2, Buster Guts. Yeah, there is a driver in TOECAR that is worse than Buster Guts, believe it or not. Just like with Asiago, I already made a video about this guy in which I covered pretty much his entire Season 1 campaign, so make sure to check that out once you're done with this video. Starting with Season 2, Buster would be called upon to fill in the number 1 Splint Cup car after Muscular Zaxtrafy got his Bellagio's rung at Pigs Creek. Just to give a bit of context, Zaxtrafy had won the previous race at the Chicago Street Course, his first in the series, but by then he had already established himself as one of TOECAR's elites after he finished second in the points in Season 1 despite not scoring a single victory. Needless to say, Buster had big shoes to fill, so how would he fill them? Oh, just by finishing 30th or worse in 3 out of the 5 starts he made in that car in Season 2. Yeah, people made fun of me because Buster made his return to the Cup Series immediately after I uploaded my video about him, but after that performance, they weren't exactly willing to glaze it. Much like my Asiago video, a lot of the stuff that I said in my video about Buster ended up aging like a fine wine, and the fact is that he will always have the blood of Druno Dollars on his hands. Well, we finally made it. Number 1. The absolute, bottom of the barrel, lowest common denominator, worst driver in TOECAR history is...
They say that if you can't race your way to a win, you should just buy it.
I guess you could consider my April Fool's video as a sort of teaser. So why is Tathrima Sato the worst driver in TOECAR? Well, to understand, we need to go back. Like all the way back. Season 1, Round 6 at Atlanta, Tyrese Halifax is involved in a devastating crash in the Cup race, leaving him with severe injuries and rendering him unable to race the following week at CRI. Taking his place in the 24 Splint Cup car would be a fresh-faced 15-year-old rookie, and in that race at CRI, he sure as hell would drive like one. I won't go on for too long about this race for the sake of time, but if you want to learn more about this race and the incidents that Tathrima was involved in, EMK has a really good video about it. But in short, Tathrima would wreck Bellagio Asiago, thus knocking him out of the playoffs. And for whatever reason, instead of throwing the book at him, the people in charge of the series decided that Tathrima deserved another opportunity at Kansas. This time not filling in for Tyrese Halifax, but relieving him. And oddly enough, there's a bit of a fine print clause in the TOECAR rules stating that if a relief driver fills in for a championship contender in the final race, and if that relief driver beats all the other championship contenders, then that relief driver splits the championship between themselves and the original driver of that car. And guess what happens next?
Is that?
It is.
Is that the 24?
Oh my. The 24 car of Tathrima Sato / Tyrese Halifax is the first playoff driver to get back to the line.
You know, this really makes me wonder whether or not there was someone else that maybe had a hand in writing that relief driver rule, you know, besides the TOECAR officials. Huh. Anyway, Tathrima would obviously be promoted to a full-time ride in the Splint Cup Series for Season 2 because of this, and that went just about as well as you'd expect. I frankly don't feel like wasting any more breath talking about this guy's Season 2 campaign, especially since Season 3 is what I want to focus on. Season 3 is what proved to me that, without a doubt, Tathrima Sato is the worst driver in TOECAR history. For the first 4 or 5 rounds of his Truck Series campaign, it looked to be about much the same, and even when his team started to improve, as much as I hate to say that, with You Can't Hurt Me getting his first win at Gauntlet, Tathrima was pretty obviously still playing second fiddle, which was sad considering he was literally driving for his dad's team. However, the second half of his season would see him fall to an even worse issue. This guy had an obsession with choking. I know I called Ollie Alakainen a choke artist not that long ago, but at least he proved me wrong by winning a feature in North Texas. How many wins does Tathrima have? Come on, you already know the answer. But to me, the moment that sealed Tathrima Sato's fate as the worst driver in TOECAR was the previously mentioned Truck Series race at the 8 Bowl. What people may not remember from that race is that Tathrima was actually up front for most of it, even taking the lead at a couple points during the race. However, driving for a team that would go on to win the championship, might I add. He would throw away the race in the final moments to none other than Mark I Guess. And let me just remind you guys, Mark I Guess was on the fast track to having the statistically worst season in TOECAR history. And Tathrima threw away the race to this motherfucker. Yeah, the guy got promoted to the Splint Cup Series for Season 4, somehow. But do I think he's gonna do any better than he did in Season 3? Take a fucking guess. I just don't see how you can make excuses for this guy. Well, I know there will be plenty of people trying to make excuses for him, but I sure as hell won't. Because I know, without a doubt, that Tathrima Sato is the worst driver in TOECAR history and will be forevermore. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and thank you guys so much for hearing me essentially write the next few seasons of TOECAR history, because I'm sure every single one of my predictions is going to age like a fine wine. Yeah. I wish I could have gotten this video out sooner, but it ended up being way longer than I thought it would be, so I hope it was worth the wait to you guys. But yeah. For now, I'm Steroil, and I'll see you in whatever I make next. Deuces.
I am not crazy! I am not crazy. I know they swapped those drivers. I knew it was the 24. One after Daddy McBetty, as if they could ever make such a mistake. Never. Never. I just couldn't prove it. He covered his tracks. He got Tristan in the booth to lie for him. You think this is something? You think this is bad? This chicanery? He's done worse. That first start. Are you telling me that a car just happens to turn like that? No, he orchestrated it. Tathrima. He wrecked Bellagio in cold blood, and the booth saved him. And they shouldn't have. They gave him another opportunity at Kansas. What were they thinking? He'll never change. He'll never change ever since he was 15. Always the same. Couldn't keep his chrome horn off of people. But not our Tathrima. Couldn't be precious Tathrima. Wrecking them blind. And he gets to keep his championship over Rustard and Ketchup? What a sick joke! I should have stopped him when I had the chance. But you have to stop him. You